Hi everyone, welcome. What you see here is some pumpkin, some watermelon, some cantaloupe melon, and coffee. So this lovely assortment of colorful and delicious fruits and veggies, not to mention some ice crystals here as a bonus, are the meal that we're going to give to the now 610-day-old VermiBag Mini, with the red wigglers living in here, and this today is feeding number 50, 50, and I'm very curious to see how they've done with the last meal. The last meal we gave them was a just kind of an experimental recipe. It was candied orange, candied slices of orange. So the orange was a little bit dry, because, you know, in the end, when it's a finished product, when you've prepared the stuff, it's meant to be kind of dried out with the sugar kind of cooked into the orange. And it just didn't even turn out that good, I think, from what I remember. I didn't even taste it, but I guess that's the reason it was transformed from being human food into worm food, because it just didn't turn out quite the way it was intended to. So I've collected up this leftover bits and pieces of our feeding zone indicator, because, well, the coffee they're getting comes with a replacement feeding zone indicator. And we've been watching this level rise and rise and rise gradually. In the past, it was the bottom of the window that was always visible, clearly visible, never covered with any material. But more recently, we've just gone into kind of hyperdrive here, applying lots and lots of bedding all the time. And that was the same story last time. So besides all these lovely leaves that are sprinkled out here on the top surface, we included a good bit of my prepared bedding, which also includes a little bit of leafy matter, but it actually consists mainly of shredded paper and cardboard. I laid that down on top of a napkin, and went some shredded paper cardboard leaf mixture, my prepared bedding. Onto it went some Brussels sprouts. There were just a couple spoiled Brussels sprouts that the worms got last time too, but the main event was a whole bunch of that candied orange. And I had no idea what to expect. But I think I just caught a little whiff of citrus. So I am curious to see what we get here. I figured before we get too far along, I would just try to blend in some of this lovely leafy material. And on a couple occasions, when I did probe a little bit deeper, it just looks so nice down there. The castings are coming along so good, and there's just worms everywhere. The moisture in this system was always kind of a headache to deal with. I would have to come in here all the time with my spray bottle to compensate for some dryness that would always manage to creep in. Or, well, maybe it's more like the moisture creeping out and us having to counteract that drying. So now, this pumpkin stem, I actually did check how long ago this pumpkin stem was started. Wow, that's so soft on the bottom even. This thing, I believe, is now the oldest tracked item that I've ever had. Because once upon a time, when this VermiBag was last commissioned, it ran for 700 days. And at this point, this pumpkin stem's been in service for longer than that. So, it's kind of a record in terms of the longest thing that's ever, active thing that's ever been tracked in my tracking spreadsheet. So it's a little bit difficult to tell if the worms are digging this orange or not. I mean, since it did go in here kind of dried out and stuff, I figured it would require a little bit of time to get rehydrated before any worm activity could even be considered as happening in here. And I guess citrus, you know, citrus also kind of has a reputation as possibly having a little bit of citric acid in there, which might be seen by the worms as a little bit unpleasant. I mean, I know that citrus always does eventually go think this is a piece of plastic, so I'm removing it. But it might take a little while. I guess part of my thinking was that it would be kind of cool if we came in here and found that the worms had just gone berserk for this stuff, and that we would see some really major worm parties occurring. But it doesn't seem like that was meant to be. So I'm not sure what this is here. Once in a while I do find unusual stuff. I'm trying to imagine what this could have come in here with. A fairly tough strand of something. Some sort of a thread. Hopefully it's not the VermiBag Mini going to pieces. I doubt that that's the case. I hope it's not the case. Maybe it was just some sort of a reinforcing thread on some tape or something, but as long as it was in my hand, I figured I would extract it, because it certainly didn't seem like the sort of stuff that would break down. So, I guess my interest in what happened to the orange is faded. I kind of figured since these things were drenched in sugar that they'd become really popular, but I guess that's just not really enough to override the natural tendency that worms have when it comes to utilizing orange as a food substance. So I definitely saw traces of mold growing on a couple of these. Right there's a good example of it. And I'm sure that in itself is already a good sign that the stuff is in the process of getting broken down, even if it's the mold that gets the jump start on it. That's fine. I know the worms will come in soon after and pick up where the mold left off, and we'll see no signs of that stuff eventually. So I've excavated a little bit of a trench or a hole down here in the center of the system, resisting the temptation to dig down deep, although it seems like we've maybe not even reached the depth that we were at last time, because I'm still bumping into some of these layers of orange. I went in here with prepared bedding, some orange, more prepared bedding, some more orange, so I think I had like 3 layers of this stuff in here. There was a good bit of orange placed in here. And I am always glad to come back in a fairly short period of time to give them more food when I find that the previous feeding seems like it didn't really launch the way I thought it would. And eventually the stuff will certainly get utilized by the worms as nourishment. But it does feel good that we were able to come in here to give them some extra stuff that they can work on almost immediately. All this lovely pumpkin and melon. I think it's going to be a welcome treat. So I believe that this right here was the last thing we would encounter, because that was at the very bottom before I started laying in the feeding. I started by draping out a little piece of paper towel or napkin or whatever that was to begin with, and then on top of that came the feeding. So that right there, I believe, is the last of the leftovers to be excavated. Not that it all needs to be excavated, but I'm just the curious type and I can't seem to resist. So let's get to giving them their feeding. I've got my prepared bedding here, so I'm going to grab a nice little handful of that to begin with down here. And I guess, I don't know, adding as much bedding as possible lately has been sort of my thing with this system, just because we're already starting to see some of the good effects of doing it over the past numerous check-ins by watching the level of the system rise. And that's really what I was hoping for, was to go beyond that lower pane of the view window over there, which always seemed to be the level to which this system would reach and never any higher. And it did seem like it was necessary to sort of make the conscious decision to, you know, just kind of go at it with no holds barred and just go for it in terms of giving them lots and lots of bedding, a lot more than we ever would in the past. And it's starting to pile up nice, and the worms do seem like they're attempting to keep up with it. And in can come the remainder of today's yummy meal. Not a whole lot here. I guess I was really just interested in getting back in here to see how that orange had been received. Like I said before, I'm kind of glad that we did check, because this way we can give them some fresh, yummy stuff to work on while they're waiting for the orange to become something that they could really dig into. So my leaves are going in dry, but it does seem to me like the moisture level in here has been pretty good. Not to mention the stuff we just added has a pretty good moisture content to it as well, which will be shared with the surrounding materials. And it does feel good to not have to be adding moisture anymore to this system. Not that it was a big problem to do so, but I guess it just seems like a shame to have to manage that sort of a thing, especially since the moisture in the system is so important to the well-being of the worms. So I'm going to bring in some more of this leafy matter as sort of a top coating here. Oh boy, that might be a little more than I planned on, but you know what? Perhaps it's a sign. Perhaps it just was meant to let me know that what I'm doing is what the worms want, and it's what's keeping the system nice and healthy and happy. So we're going to stick with it. That's a nice, generous portion. And I just have this tendency to want to pull out little sticks because they're just such slow-going objects. It almost seems like a waste of time to have them in the worm bins. So, look at that. I gotta admit, I'm kind of looking forward to the point where we're going to be able to actually cover up the entire view window and keep going. So, that's it for our check-in, everyone, with the now 610-day-old system doing so nice over here. You know, when I first came in here, I almost kind of had an inkling as to what to expect from the oranges, because a lot of times we come in here and there's just a huge divot in here from the worms coming in to gobble up all the foods that were placed in there, and that void allows the material to drop, and then the plastic follows. But the fact that it stayed kind of level was already in a way also a sign to me that, hey, you know, maybe the oranges aren't really as big a hit as I expected. So, got a couple things to take care of, getting cleaned up, put away. Not going to waste your time with that. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.